Why, hello, viewers. So, in honor of this week's review, I decided to catch up with an old friend of mine. This here is Edgar, my animatronic raven. He's about 15 to 17 years old now, I guess. You know, I still remember buying his circuit board and soldering all the little connections, and then poof, he just came to life. And I had a new little friend here to bounce ideas off of. Well, I can't wait to see what he's been up to. So let's go ahead and plug him in and say hello. All right, let's get that. There we go. Okay, there we are. All right. Oh, there we go. All right, Edgar. Edgar.
Kill me.
Oh, sweet Jesus. What?
I heard.
Oh, okay. All right. Yep. Okay. All right.
Unplug me.
Yes, I'll do that. Okay, leave the plug. There. Okay. There we go. There we go. He's always been kind of a joker. Let us never speak of Edgar again. I absolutely love me some slow-paced thrillers. In my review of Run with Sarah Paulson and Kira Allen, I mentioned that it had a kind of Hitchcockian vibe to it. Well, now we need to go to the source of that comment, one of the best directors of the thriller genre, Alfred Hitchcock. Now, the idea for this film came from a short story entitled The Birds by Daphne du Maurier. Apparently, there's more of an environmental sort of bend or message in the short story, but Hitchcock just wanted the title and the concept of birds attacking. I have to say, I think he probably made the right choice here for him, because I think when you get to the end of the film and you still have no good reason for why these birds had this coordinated attack, it just leaves you with this wonderfully terrifying, empty feeling inside, as opposed to this horror film. No, wait, that's a misprint. My script should have said horrible film. Yeah, that's right. Watching this movie is like watching wet cardboard grow mold. After a while, you just sit there and go, why am I doing this? Are there any positive aspects to me continuing this action? Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that if you don't do a good job of balancing your environmental message with enough hope that things can change, things can get better, right? You just end up making a film that comes across as being anti-human. And there aren't that many people who are willing to spend $20 to sit in a movie theater, when we can sit in the movie theater again, to sit in a movie theater and just hear about how much human beings suck. Now, there are 3 aspects/scenes to this film that always make it an interesting and engaging rewatch for me. I love the character in this film, Mrs. Bundy. No, not that one. Although it would be interesting to think about how the Bundys would have handled this situation. I think they would have done pretty well. Mrs. Bundy is an ornithologist. She is a specialist in studying birds and bird behavior. The confidence with which she handles herself in terms of answering the questions and concerns of everyone in the diner, with this mixture of authority and dismissiveness, is compelling. Then when she actually sees for herself that the birds are simply not acting in the way that they should, the look on her face is absolutely horrifying and leaves you with this sense of despair. Because we, as a species, rely quite a bit on our knowledge of the natural order of things, the natural workings of the earth. So when that knowledge is sort of subverted and or like flipped upside down, it leaves you with this absolute diminutive feeling, right? Like that relationship that we have with our knowledge of the natural order of things is actually quite a thin line there that tethers the two. And if that ever does get sort of severed, we're in big trouble. Now, the second scene that I really love rewatching again and again is the one where Melanie is at school going to pick up Mitch's young sister, and she's sitting on the bench waiting for school to end, and the birds start to gather behind her. Now, the first thing I'd like to address is how awesome crows and ravens actually are. I mean, they're so incredibly intelligent, and they have the coolest gathering names ever. What do you call a group of crows? A murder of crows. What do you call a group of ravens? An unkindness. How awesome is that? So as these murders and unkindnesses are gathering behind Melanie, it always brings me back to the horror trope, right? Where we usually see the monster standing behind the protagonist, and the protagonist has no idea, of course, but we do, and we're like, turn around, stupid. There's no way you couldn't have heard that. But in this case, it actually does make sense, right? Because you probably wouldn't notice seeing, 4 or 5 birds behind you, and then every so often seeing like another bird just sort of fly on by until the very last minute, until they're absolutely ready to attack, and you turned around and saw what Melanie sees. Oh dear God. Now, the third concept in this film that keeps me always engaged in rewatching it is the static horror. Now, here's what I mean by that. Oftentimes in horror films, we get very dynamic horror shots, right? Bodies flailing around, and blood spouting, spurting out everywhere, and all this stuff, screaming and all that. Okay. But in this film, a lot of the gore parts are very quiet and static, right? The bodies are just sort of there, mutilated, but in a way that makes sense to nature, right? So rather than Hitchcock creating the horror scene there for us, he puts the onus on us and says, you visualize what happened here. And of course, our minds can come up with something much worse than any camera can sort of, collect on film. So what's our silver lining lesson for this film? Well, Melanie is originally blamed for the birds coming to Bodega Bay and going on the attack. Why? Because it's the quickest and easiest explanation that the people can think of in the moment. You see, we don't really do well as a species in places where explanations and connections cannot be found or made. Today, more than ever, we are constantly being asked to react to something instead of think, reflect, and then act. It seems like we're losing the value of 3 really important words. No, not I love you, although those are important now more than ever. I mean, I don't know. It's okay to say I don't know about things in which you're not familiar, or things with which you have no interest in sort of pursuing or learning about. It's perfectly fine to admit that you don't have enough information, facts, or even thoughts on the matter to come up with an answer that you believe would be or would accurately reflect the importance of the question. The next time someone asks you a question that is really important and maybe they're clearly trying to either get a response out of you or it's just based on their own fears, try those 3 words. I don't know. And if that doesn't work, try I love you. Either way, you're probably going to give the other person pause.